Today, we will be discussing the medical waste impact of COVID 19, waste management, and the environmental and health impact of each. Last year in 2020, the COVID 19 epidemic surged globally, affecting billions of lives. COVID 19, or coronavirus, according to the World Health Organization, is an infectious disease that gives mild to severe respiratory illnesses that spread through droplets. And in response to the global health epidemic, different organizations mandated precautionary measures to decrease disease transmission. From single-use face masks to disinfectant bottles, the accumulation of waste from protective personal equipment of medical workers to every personal sanitizer bottle, recent studies have predicted a twofold increase of plastic debris, including micro and nano-sized plastics, by the year 2030. A big portion of the population are unconscious of how much the world has exponentially increased the use of plastics, from disposable masks to plastic packaging. Here is a clip from the Huffington Post with regards with how the pandemic has been affecting our oceans.
But see plastic pollution everywhere, and inevitably that's single-use throwaway plastics. We see lots of plastic bottles, plastic cotton bud sticks. We see confectionery wrappers. The coronavirus pandemic has really had an impact on the use of plastics and the types of plastics we're seeing in our environment now. So we're seeing lots of plastic go into our oceans. We're seeing a much less resilient ocean. So animals and wildlife being impacted, habitats and ecosystems being impacted, and that makes it less resilient and able to withstand the shocks of climate change. So it's all interconnected.
Globally, studies have estimated the use of 129 billion face masks and 65 billion gloves. Waste from pandemic does not just stop at medical waste. Single-use plastics from masks, food, and containers accumulate as well. Appropriate segregation and proper disposal of waste is a crucial step in reducing their environmental footprint. According to a study regarding personal protective equipment for COVID-19, majority of the suggested N95 masks are made of plastics such as polypropylene and polyethylene terephthalate. Likewise, masks and surgical gloves are made of non-woven materials that frequently include the other polymers, and these masks, although advertised as sustainable and environmentally friendly, have been proven to decrease incidences of COVID-19, could take decades to hundreds of years to degrade depending on the environment it was left in. In the case of improper waste management of plastics, the pollution usually leads to the ocean or landfills. Plastics that end up in the ocean are estimated around 8 million tons of plastic yearly, leading to degradation of marine habitat, which eventually affects aquatic organisms. Here is a clip from Vox regarding what the effects of decades of plastic pollution in the ocean has led to.
This is clue number 1 in the case of the missing plastic, a seafloor sediment sample. It was taken from the bottom of the Santa Barbara Basin off the coast of California. It represents a measure of time, from 1870 at its deepest layer of sediment up until 2009. But this period, from 1945 to 2009, is where the study authors were focused on. It's the era of plastic production. In these layers, scientists found plastic fibers and fragments that were 1 millimeter or smaller in size. They found more and more plastic particles as the years went on, doubling every 15 years. That rate is nearly identical to the rate of global plastic production.
As soon as you see a layer of microplastic, you know you passed the 1950s. And that's the legacy of our generation.
This is Laurent Lebreton. He works at the Ocean Cleanup and led the study of the objects in the Great Pacific Garbage Patch.
And this will be there forever. We know that.
The sea sediment study looked at microplastics, particles smaller than 5 millimeters. These either come from synthetic clothing fibers, or they are the result of larger plastics breaking down. We found these tiny particles floating throughout the ocean, and even in the guts of the ocean's tiniest creatures, like plankton. But the sediment study shows that some of our plastic is likely hiding buried in the seafloor, too.
Microplastics could also house potentially harmful microorganisms and could lead to potential risk of drinking water. According to the World Health Organization, in 2016, 485,000 diarrheal deaths were attributed to microbially contaminated drinking water. Things such as biofilms are created when pathogens have a surface to multiply on fresh water and affects the drinking water of local communities. On the other hand, plastics that end up in the landfill are mostly managed by incineration or burning. According to a study conducted to review the health effects of plastic waste disposal, the process of incineration of plastics produces soot and ashes. Harmful substances, for example, carbon monoxide, nitrogen, dioxins, and furans are released when plastic is burnt. The rainfall can also make some of these toxic compounds to sink into the soil, contaminate the groundwater, or be absorbed by the plants growing on this soil, therefore becoming incorporated into the local surrounding food chain. The Plastic Soup Foundation accumulated studies with regards to health risks when there is prolonged exposure to plastics and when it is incorporated in the food chain. Substances such as bisphenol A that are used in plastics for malleability are shown to be endocrine disruptors associated with around 80 diseases, including testicular cancer, obesity, and reproductive disorders. Improperly disposed larger plastic containers have also been theorized as a breeding ground for insects that are potential vectors like mosquitoes and flies for potentially harmful diseases like dengue and malaria. Here's a clip from Plastic Oceans regarding the plastic effect in our bodies.
A lot of plastics release chemicals that have estrogenic activity.
Estrogenic activity, or EA, happens when a chemical like BPA or phthalate leaches from plastic and enters the body, where it mimics the hormone estrogen. 92.6% of Americans aged 6 and older have detectable levels of BPA in their bodies. The levels in children between 6 and 11 years of age are twice as high as those in older Americans.
The majority of plastics increase the release of chemicals having estrogenic activity after they've been exposed, particularly sunlight.
How do you not consume it? You can't go anywhere without seeing food wrapped in plastic. You can't go to a restaurant without, takeout boxes being in plastic, hot foods going into plastic.
My answer there is, well, demand safer plastic.
Are all of those chemicals not regulated?
No, the FDA at present does not have any regulations.
Having a plan post-pandemic with dealing with the exponential increase of plastic waste that stem from public safety protocols and government mandates would be beneficial to different national environmental agencies. However, proper evaluation of the efficiency and consequences of different disposal methods are needed so that to minimize the potential risk and environmental footprint. It's very rare that we see media cover the effects of the COVID-19 regarding pollution. However, in this clip, we see the increasing awareness of the public with regards with the pollution problem.
Environmentalists are sounding the alarm as the pandemic brings on another undesirable side effect: plastic waste from PPE. The unrecyclable plastic and other items now filling up landfills and polluting oceans and waterways. Eyewitness News reporter Miriam Hernandez has the story.
A casualty of COVID that is on the rise. From disposable PPE to takeout food containers to all the new trash you're generating while working at home. And guess what's not recyclable?
Not recyclable at your home recycling program. Plastic film and plastic bags, protective gear like gloves, face masks, towels, and plastic forks and spoons.
That's more residential trash going into landfills and waterways. Surfrider Foundation coordinates cleanups, Rachel Kosha tracks plastic waste.
There's been about a 70% increase in the number of items that we're finding per cleanup.
A study published last month by Science Advances found that the U.S. took the spot for the biggest ocean plastics polluter in the world in 2016. Now add COVID waste. Since June, the Surfrider Foundation says PPE items have turned up in numbers on par with styrofoam cups.
These plastics are going to break down into microplastics, which then are consumed by everything on this planet, including us.
We are still recovering from the COVID-19 epidemic, and that takes precedence over most things. However, we should be aware of the future post-pandemic and how we will clean up our mess. The more we are aware of our waste outputs exponentially increasing, the more discussions will be in for managing the problem. The discussion in the media today is solely focused on mitigating the current incidence and mortality rate of the pandemic, which is very important. Nevertheless, we should also imagine the potential long-term impact to our environment of the choices we make today. This is Jomer Fernandez, and thank you for watching.